Hi, and welcome to this week's art vlog, where I'm bringing you along as I think about developing my next Skillshare class, which combines unexpected perspective and still life. I really should call it Not So Still Life, as I'll be encouraging an interesting animal shape to enliven the artwork. The approach is similar to how I think about making art, so I hope you'll find it helpful. Here's my initial collection of images. The room in the upper right corner has an unusual perspective, and I'm interested in exaggerating the line and the elements. It's not about getting it perfect. In fact, it's the sketchy doodle quality of it that will give it personality. This isn't the exact project I'm developing, but it's helping me home in on the essence of what I want to teach in the class and convey in the art. Making copyright-free images available to students for the project is the first thing I think about. My first go-to places for that are Pexels or Unsplash, and depending on the class, I'll then collect images on Pinterest and make an inspiration board for people interested in expanding on the idea or going in a little different direction. I also want to quickly share and give credit regarding the art on the left. I've mentioned before that I love occasionally making art for Room Portrait Club on Instagram. The photo for this art is by Molly Mahan Block Printing. I loved the colors, so I'm using a similar palette for this sketchbook art today. In the class, we'll do some non-dominant hand doodle sketches to warm up. And for the main pieces here, like the desk, the chair, and the picture frames, I'm holding the brush loosely and closer to the top of the brush to encourage a wonky line. For the smaller details, I'm holding the brush with a little more control. It's important to me for students to have fun and success, which is why I like the doodle approach. But with the reference images, I'm also looking for a strong composition by placing elements where there's a strong connection between them. A limited color palette also goes a long way toward having success because it ensures cohesiveness. We won't use black because it's easy to muddy the painting, except for the tiniest details, like for the eyes. I'll use a Posca pen for the cat's eyes because it's easier to get them to be similar than it would be with a brush. I also try to consider less supplies because I don't want people to feel they have to spend a lot to make something fun. For this style of art, you could even use affordable tempera paints that would also look charming with the addition of a fine line permanent marker or even basic pencils. I encourage the use of acrylic gouache over gouache because it's easier to use. The reference photo of the Monstera plant has more details than the plant here in this art. The general shape is enough to convey what it is, a large leafy indoor plant. Also, you can invent light and shadow without having a firm grasp of it by simply adding a few more colors in a range of values to a single element, like here with the chair. I'll be using green and turquoise in it, and I'll add a little bit of darkness as well. What it does is it engages the eye to keep moving around the chair from light to dark to light. And I'll do the same thing with the focal point of this particular painting with the figure. The colors don't have to match skin tone exactly. In fact, you'll see me adding some green and turquoise to her as well. And it's just a subtle thing where, I'm using the same colors that I'm putting in the chair. I'll be using that on her too, so that there's some balance. So even though, she's very different because she's brown, compared to anything else in the artwork, it's a way to also use colors that I've already used in the painting. And again, this is just a way to create balance and some cohesiveness. I like to ask myself how to bring something that is not usual to the art. So cats are perfect for this since they can move their bodies in all kinds of interesting shapes. So I'll be looking for images that show this. Also, just unusual animals in general always make art fun. One of my favorite things to do lately, and I'm sure you've noticed this in other videos, is adding paintings to the artwork. And I feel like a landscape painting is a really great device to give even more depth to your artwork. I mean, this is a very flat illustration, but that landscape draws your eye, to the mountain, to the sky, so it looks beyond. I mean, it looks like a window, but even a painting can achieve that same effect. I also like to add a combination of realism with some abstract. And even though it's just a tiny corner in the leftmost painting, that little touch of abstract gives contrast to the two artworks that are to the right of it. I have this tendency to want to correct. And you can see here that there is that, thicker line that I'm adding to that edge of the desk. And I realize that I catch myself. So then what I loved was the uneven line that was there, but for whatever reason, I tend to go to that place of, oh, I need to straighten that out. Well, it's okay to do that. You can also go in though and make that line look uneven again. So if you find yourself making corrections and then realizing that maybe the art is too tight or too controlled, which this happens to me all the time, you can't undo what you've done. You can bring the messy back in, allow yourself to do that, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You can create the illusion of vertical depth with a floor pattern or a rug. You could even put items on the floor or even another pet. However, I like to keep in mind not to distract from the things that I want people to look at. So once I establish what main focal points I want people to look at, I want to make sure that the addition of any more details help make those things stand out. So in this case, the rug that I am creating has a little bit more muted tones than I've already been using. And in fact, it takes me a moment, like I'll put in the lines and I feel a little discomfort at first because I just think, oh, it's just too much, it's taking away from what I'm creating. But once, then I'm now painting the papers, and it's a way to just give myself time to see if that rug works. You don't need to destroy something immediately upon placing it. If you don't like it, just give it a moment and see if you can get used to it. And in this case, I did get used to it. I could have left it exactly how it is. Like at this stage, I do like it now. I became accustomed to it, but I do end up adding a little more color. But you can see that by adding that pattern underneath, it just prompted me to now want that desk to stand out more. I actually wasn't intending on coloring the paper white. I was just going to leave them as outlines, but just adding that little bit of rug made me want to punch up the desk even more. So what happened too is, and this is something I'd like to encourage you to do, is the floor, the pink that I had painted, had some very subtle rectangular, square-ish shapes. So they kind of looked a little bit like blobs. So I decided I would just call them out. And so then what I thought is, okay, it's a repeat pattern that echoes the chair. And actually it brings more attention to the chair, just having those shapes underneath it. So like I said, I added a little more color and decided that it would work. And I think, in fact, I end up adding even more color. I bring in a little bit more of the peach. I like to add just a teensy little dot of white to the eyes. It's, the eye shine. It just gives it a little bit more realism and brings people and animals a little bit to life. I don't know if you are considering teaching. I think it's a wonderful way to bring joy to another person. Skillshare did not sponsor this video, but I do think it's a great platform. And there's so many online platforms that I just so appreciate, so many of them. I really appreciate that they encourage short classes and lessons, particularly on Skillshare. As a teacher or a busy person, we don't have a lot of time to come up with lengthy things. And so I think it's great that you could teach a single aspect of an artwork, or you can just share how you created a particular piece. Sometimes people just get excited about, the fun colors and great composition. And that's why they sign up, it's just they want to do that one thing that you just did. And it's just a really great way to connect with other people. I find it super rewarding, especially when you see the projects that students create from your ideas. I let this artwork sit for a couple of days. I loved the peachy wall and the pink floor, but I really did think that there needed to be a little more contrast, but I wasn't totally sure. So after 2 days, I decided that yes, I would definitely go for it. And I think it makes the art on the wall pop and draws the eye to the back wall and the plants a little bit more. And here at the end, the next step for my Skillshare class process will be to create a few pieces in the spirit of the theme that I shared with you today. I'm super excited to get going. I've already started making some Pinterest boards for inspiration. I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks so much for giving it a thumbs up if you liked it. I'm so glad that you joined me here today. I really appreciate you and your attention. Happy creating.